Slide 66, Lesson 4, Independent Personal Pronouns. I, thou, you, he, she, we, they. In this diagram we have a number of pictures for the first, second and third person singular and the first, second and third person plural, and we'll have a look at the Hebrew words for I, thou, you, he, she, we and they. So the first one is the first person common singular, which is a fancy way of saying I, and I in Hebrew is ani, I. First person common singular. First person, remember first person means I or we. The S there means singular and the P there means plural. And the other word for I is anochi. Anochi. So we have ani, ani, or anochi, and that means I. Now the second person masculine singular, that is basically when I say you to somebody, so it's you to a man, one man, and in King James English we have the word thou, which is actually, as I've said before, it means you just to one person. So you don't say thou to a group of people, you say thou to one person when you're speaking to the king, for example, or somebody else. So that's thou, that's you. And atar is you, and it's you to a man, and it's you to just one man. So it's a second person masculine singular, or 2ms. So the main thing here is just to learn these words. Don't get too hung up on this terminology, but you'll see it all the time and you'll begin to understand why we use that later. Okay, when I say you to a woman in Hebrew, I have a slightly different word I use. I don't say atar, that's just to a man. But if I say you to a woman, I say art, art. Aleph Tav, art. So that's thou to a woman, and it is called a second person feminine singular, or 2fs. Okay, so that's second person done, both for a man and for a woman. Now we'll have a look at third person. When I'm speaking to somebody about somebody else, that is a third person. If I'm speaking about a man, I will say he in Hebrew, in English, he, 3ms, and third person masculine singular. So he, in English, this person here, we're talking to somebody about him. So this man could be talking to this lady about this man over here. So in English we'd say he, but in Hebrew we have another word, and confusingly it's this word hey, vav, aleph, and the vav is a shurek, it's a u sound. So this is the word in Hebrew, who. So hey, shurek, aleph is the word who, which means in English he. Okay, so that's a word you have to learn. And if I'm speaking to somebody about a woman, then I'll say in English, I'll say she, which is the third person feminine, because I'm speaking of a woman, singular, I'm just speaking of one woman. Now confusingly, the word for she in Hebrew is this word here, hey, yod, or cherik yod, aleph, which is pronounced he. So the word for she is the word hey yod aleph, which is pronounced he. So I hope that doesn't spin you out. It's a bit of a joke in Hebrew, but the word for saying he in Hebrew is who, and the word for she in Hebrew is he. All right. So you'll get that in the end. Now, in the first 5 books of Moses, or Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the word for she is spelt with a vav. So it looks very similar to the word for he, which is the word who. So the word for she, in every other book of the Bible, in the Old Testament, it is, or Tanakh, it's hey, cherik yod aleph, he, which means she. But it's spelt with a hey, a vav, and an aleph in the first 5 books of Moses, Genesis to Deuteronomy. And it has a little cherik at the bottom, so you know to pronounce it he and not who. So you have to look at the dots and dashes. Of course, context will show. If you're talking to a woman, you'll know that it's pronounced he. But just look at the dots and they'll tell you how to pronounce it. So you have to get your head around the dots and dashes. So that is the first person, second person, and third person singular. And now we'll have a look at the words for the plural. So again, if I say, if I want to say, speak of myself, I say I in English, or ani, or anochi. And if I want to speak to myself with as a group of people, I say we. And in Hebrew, the word for we is anachnu, or sometimes anu, anachnu. Aleph, nun, chet, nun, shurek, or vav with a little dot in it. So that's a u sound. Anachnu. So if I want to say I in Hebrew, I say ani, or anochi. But if I want to say we, I say anachnu. So the technical terminology for the word we in Hebrew, anachnu, is a first person common plural. First person common plural, as opposed to first person common singular. So it's a group of people, plural. It's common. So it's neither male, it includes male and female. Okay. Now, if I want to say you to a group of people, either a group of men or a group of men and women, then I use the word atim, aleph, tav, mem. There's a little seagull here. And this dot here means it's a doubling of the letter, the hard letter, atim. So that means you to a group of men, or a group of men and women. Usually a group of men. So then if I want to speak to a group of women, I use another word, atin, or atna. So atin. You to a group of women. So that's a second person feminine plural, 2FP. Again, we'll see all that terminology used all the time, and you'll begin to get the hang of it eventually. But the main thing is, as I say, the main thing is to learn these words. So the last one is the third person plural. The masculine version is for they is the word him or hema. So if I say him or hema, that's just the word in Hebrew for they. And this is called the third person masculine plural. So they. And that can be a group of men and women, but usually it's just a group of men. There they are there. So hem or hema means a group of men, but it can also be men and women. See, when you have a group of men and women, the masculine word has the dominance, if you like. Now, if I want to speak of they to a group about a group of women, I use the word hen or henna. So that's just the word for they in Hebrew. Hen or henna, they. That's called the third person feminine plural. So there you have it. These are the words that you need to learn. Ani or anochi for I, ata for you or thou, or at for you or thou to a woman, and who meaning he, and the word in Hebrew he, hey yod aleph, meaning she. And sometimes it's spelt, in the first 5 books it's spelt with a vav, and it's got a little chirik here to say don't pronounce it who but he. So he means she and who means he. Okay, you can make up a little rhyme about that to drill that into your head. And then you have to learn the words for we, you, and they when it's a group of people. So we is anachnu, you is atem, and to a group of women it's atin or atna. And when I say they in Hebrew, I use the word hem or hema, and that usually is a group of men, but it can be men and women. And but when you have just a group of women, you use the word hen or henna for they. So there we have it. So these are called independent personal pronouns. And that's just a fancy way of saying these words here. I, thou, you, he, she, we, and they. And you'll see all this sort of terminology, first person, second person, third person, used all the time in grammar books and in exercises and so forth. So you have to know what they're talking about.